Hello, we are the Sacred Heart Academy Magical Singers from Louisville, Kentucky in the United States. We will be singing Why We Sing by Greg Gilpin. A sound of hope, a sound of peace, a sound that celebrates and speaks what we believe. A sound of love, a sound so strong. It's amazing what is given when we share a song. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice, why we stand as one in harmony. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice. Take my hand and sing with me. Soothe the soul, and a heart, bring together lives that have been torn apart. Share the joy, find a friend. It's a never-ending gift that circles back again. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice, why we stand as one in harmony. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice. Take my hand and sing with me. Music builds a bridge, it can tear down a wall. Music is a language that can speak to one and all. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice, why we stand as one in harmony. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice. Take my hand and sing with me. This is why we sing, we sing, we sing.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this session titled The Future of Exponential Education. And this session will be discussing how technology can exponentially change the future of learning. My name is Fidelis Ndenge, and I am head of IB World Schools Department here in the IB. I'm delighted to be your content moderator for the next 45 minutes. And before I introduce our keynote speaker, I have a few points to make. Following the presentation, we will have time for questions from the audience, so feel free to submit your questions through the questions tab. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, and please keep it engaging like that. A recording for this presentation will be available on demand after the session. And I would like to give a brief introduction of our keynote speaker, Dirkx. Yours is an international award-winning founder, speaker, and author whose work and speeches on the future of work, the future of education, diversity and inclusion, and leadership have influenced thousands across the world. As a world-traveled keynote speaker and Singularity University faculty member, yours is a two-time founder, best-selling author, global diversity and inclusion, and education expert. She is the CEO of an artificial and emotional intelligence startup, Being Over AI, an organization which transforms lives through emotional and artificial intelligence, enhancing leadership, personal, work, and well-being skills. For the past 20 years, Yossi's work has resided at the intersection of the arts, physicality, education, and inclusion. Throughout her career, she has designed products and solutions to tackle some of the world's biggest challenges: scaling education, holistic learning, and somatic approaches for exponential growth. These solutions are part of Meet Anna, a company she founded 6 years ago. Having listened to some of her keynote speeches, yours is energetic, compelling, and able to move the audience through exciting stories and engaging data-driven narratives. She is an experienced day chair, keynote speaker, and workshop facilitator. She has traveled to over 100 countries and has lived in 13. She has speaking experience across North America, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our opening keynote speaker, yours, Dirkx.
Hi, everybody. It is an absolute pleasure to meet you today. Fidelis, thank you for the wonderful introduction that you have given. I very much appreciate it. I am mindful that we are going to have an incredible session together today, and I very much look forward to it, to meeting all of you during the Q&A. So please feel free to get your questions ready. I'm going to kick off and start sharing my screen. And as soon as we are able to see that, I will get started with you. And I can't wait to take you through what might be some of the main elements that we should consider when it comes to the future of education. So, as we kick off today's session, I am hoping you can see my screen on the future of exponential education, which I will be taking you through for the next 30 to 45 minutes and sharing some concepts and ideas that will hopefully open your mind and challenge you and encourage you to think about all the wonderful things that lie ahead when it comes to learning, when it comes to education. As Fidelis said, my name is Jos. And before we kick off, I do have to confess, I am an IB alum. I did it the one and only American School of The Hague in the Netherlands, where I was a high school student from 9th to 12th grade. And this is between us. But I really struggled with IB chemistry. It was not easy for me. So if any of you are teaching IB chemistry out there, please be kind to your students because it can be tough. So today, I just want to start by really encouraging you to just take a moment to breathe. Take a moment to breathe. If you can, put your hands on your heart and just let it be for a second, because you know what? What we've just gone through for a year and a half has been unprecedented. And for many of us, the shifts that we have experienced, they've been real. They've taken a toll. So go ahead and take a moment to be kind to yourself. Express gratitude to yourself for all the wonderful things that you accomplished, despite the fact that you may have faced challenges that you couldn't have anticipated. And be proud of yourself that your students are being featured across platforms globally. In preparation of this keynote, I didn't read all about the scientific studies that prove that the IB is still the best program out there. No, I read about the students and what they're doing now. So be proud of yourself that you are teaching young people like Imogen Duke about collaboration. She launched a platform during the pandemic to mentor new IB students as an IB alum herself. You can be proud of that. And be proud of how far you've come and what you've achieved. And as you can see, my hands are still on my heart because I want to connect with you today. And this is the way that I would like to do that. So take a moment to breathe and be proud of where you are. Now, we don't get to be too comfortable because I am going to throw you a challenge right off the bat here. Because today we are talking about exponential education after all. And for something to be exponential, it means it can't be linear. And that's tricky because as humans, we like to be linear. But actually, what's happening with technology and the shifts around the world today is that these are in fact exponential. And that's hard for our human brain to understand. So I'm going to throw this right at you. You see 5 quotes here. You see 5 statements on this slide. Now, I want you to read them and think about if you can choose in these quotes, which ones are artificial intelligence and which ones are real. I'm just going to give you 15 seconds or so, 15 to 30 seconds, to take a quick look at these quotes. Let's take a look at the first one. The country is broken. That's why there's a great need for leadership through education, for research and development that helps make sure children know that we have the resources to help them do their educational future, and that there's a foundation to this country. And there's great work ahead for those working towards a better future. So you see these 5 quotes right here? 3 of them are AI and 2 of them are human. And that's how good technology is today. We can almost not discern who is the human and who is the AI. And that's something that I want you to prepare for because change is coming. And to give you the answers, the quotes that are artificial intelligence are quote 1, 2, and 4. And the human quotes are 3 and 5. And it's hard to tell the difference. So I've been working, as Fidelis said, with companies around the world in education, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm known as a speaker, technologist, and an entrepreneur. Some of the products that I've built have resided in the education, technology, and diversity and inclusion space and have reached over 85,000 people globally. This is over the last 10 years, starting from early childhood development through to working with adults and in between high school and university students. And everything that we've created, that my team and I work on, is an amalgamation of the most intriguing ways to think and the most relevant ways to bring technology and human together. And that's why I asked you to think about which of those quotes were AI and which of those quotes are real human, because that line is becoming blurry. So what I'd like to uncover with you today is what we can do as people to keep that line separate. Now, before we go into that, before we talk about technology too much, I want to bring something to your attention. We get so caught up in all the things on our to-do list that we forget about the bigger picture. When senior citizens on their deathbed were interviewed about their regrets, this is what they had to say. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd let myself be happier. And no matter what we teach today, no matter what kind of education we want to instill upon young people, these statements are statements to live by. And I'd like to encourage you to think about how to bring these ways of looking at life into the curriculum that you are delivering on a day-to-day basis, that you are building.
I wanted to know, how many golf balls can you fit on a jet?
502.
Very specific, and I like it. What would your management style be?
I would make them club.
Are you willing to relocate?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it
Are you looking for equity?
a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Like percentage wise? What are you thinking?
100.
What would you like your salary to be?
600 to 1,000
$600 to $1,000
a year. Yeah.
Great. Do you have any questions for me?
What is your salary for your job?
I'll answer that one for you because it could be more. It could be more.
I always like to show this video because it actually goes from this concepts that we have of elderly citizens on their deathbed, letting themselves be happier, letting themselves be in touch with their friends, being creative, being spontaneous, which is exactly what you see these children do. So when we think about pedagogical design and when we think about the curricula that we're teaching, and when we think about the ways in which to use technology to amplify that, perhaps it's time to throw some of the traditional ways that we've been thinking about learning on its head. What about approaching learning through an integrative, holistic way? Much of which we're already doing at the IB, but much of which can be powered through human-based tech. So when I talk about integrative, holistic learning, I'm talking about removing the need for curricula altogether, making learning a fluid journey throughout life. And by building personalized learning journeys through technology, removing the need for report cards, because everything is tracked just as you are as a human growing, rather than an assessment model just once a year. What about allowing people to show up fully as their true selves, as their curious, natural selves, removing the need to prioritize one learning style over another, encouraging learning in the real world, which of course I know the IB does, having capacity to free your mind to absorb new knowledge, and living in flow versus fear. What is our responsibility as teachers, as leaders, as thought leaders, to take all these elements and bring them into the way that we teach? Now, I've seen classrooms around the world. I grew up around the world, as Fidelis mentioned, and as so many of your students now. Working in classrooms from Kenya to Senegal to South Sudan, I've been fortunate to see learning opportunities even in Saudi Arabia, all over the world, where all students want is access to a life filled with curious ways in which they can reach their full potential. This is an IB class in the United Arab Emirates. I was speaking to the students there in their senior year. After my talk, I asked them, what was the biggest challenge that they faced? And they said that they weren't learning the skills for the future. Now, I know that throughout this crisis, you have had to deal with so much more than you ever expected. Making all your curricula online friendly, removing the energy that you normally have with your students. Of course, you're going to face new challenges. But what I hope this did for you is make you realize how far behind we are in education. And I don't want to scare you. I just want to be honest. Because every other field is embracing technology. But in education, it's been hard. And instead of thinking, how can we leapfrog to the future? How can we actually make the education tools that we are currently using exponential and scalable to our students? What we've done is we've gone for video. We've gone for static content. We've essentially taken the oldest forms of learning and just repositioned them into online classes when there are so many more ways in which to think about learning, making it more immersive, leapfrogging us into the future, making sure that we are not falling behind as the most important industry in the world today. When I spoke to those students, they said they're not learning the skills for the future. They do not feel prepared for the future. And I can't say I blame them, because we dealt with a crisis in the best way that we knew how. But that crisis is still ongoing as it stands today. We've got a world that's increasing at a rapid pace. And if we don't adjust the models that we use to teach, we are going to increase a gap in education that is already worrisome. So let's see what we can do about this. Let's see how we can potentially look at decreasing that gap instead of widening it. So let's talk about technology in education. Now, I want you to bear in mind, I did IB theater higher level. I loved it. For me, I'm all about the arts and connecting with humans. So how is it that I ended up in technology? It's because I know that when we make technology more human and we make humans understand and not fear what's out there for us, we have so much more ways in which to reach our full potential. Today, I want to focus a little bit on artificial intelligence, but of course, there are so many technologies, drones, augmented reality, virtual reality, and I'll touch on them a little bit, that you can leverage in your classrooms today. And again, all of this is underpinned by some key concepts: being responsible, being conscientious, and being conscious in the way that we deliver and engage with our technology. So we look at building an operating system for human capital development, because let's break it down. That is what we do. When we teach, we're building HCD. We're upskilling young learners to be well-rounded entrepreneurs, go-getters, employees, whatever it is that they want to become, but we want them to be well-rounded. And for that, we need a better system, because the system we have right now is outdated. Look at this quote by Jack Ma, one of the most well-known technologists in the world today. When we talk to technologists at this level, the conversation isn't around, we need to automate and digitize everything. No, it's about creating more space to give students the tools that the IB is already teaching them. It's about giving them access to more music, to more sport, to more art. That's what we do when we deploy technology correctly. We don't decrease those skills, we increase them. And the evolution of technology, the evolution of schools, well, it's around the corner. And if I were you, I'd look at 2028 and 2024, because it's already October 2021, and I can't tell you where this year went. But it's true that in just a few short years, we're in 2028, and schools are going to be looking quite different. And you, as a thought leader in the education space, need to be prepared for that. So where we now approach culture to be something that might sit on the outskirts of education, soon it's going to be completely and entirely part of our system, where we don't just teach it as something separate, but we want our students to live, breathe, and understand it, which, yes, again, I know we do through CAS. I'm aware that we dedicate part of the IB to this part of learning, and I applaud that. But what needs to happen, in fact, is a larger shift to making that part of a daily reality, making every moment a learning moment. And let's look at 2028. Now, here we're talking about a full-on integration between the student and the classroom. And if you look at in depth what 2028 might look at, I don't want to tell you this, but it actually says that AI mentors are going to replace teachers. I don't want you to be scared. I want you to be prepared. Because when you saw those quotes at the beginning of my presentation, that's my AI model. My AI model talks like that about the future of education. So pretty soon, some of these systems are going to be as good as humans at educating. So where does that leave us? That leaves us in an even more important role, that heart-centered role. Why are your hands on your heart? Because you need to be a connector. You need to be more than a teacher. You're a guide, you're a mentor, you're a connector, a facilitator, a leader. And that's so much more. So don't be afraid of this technology. Embrace it and allow it to work for you. Now, there are many technologies that are going to shape the future of education. Augmented reality, where we look at building 3D virtual spaces, for example, the metaverse. Artificial intelligence, where models talk like humans and engage with students one-on-one. Adaptive technology, where we're able to really make sure that the technology that we're using is constantly engaging with us in a way that we need it to. It's adaptive to our learning. Competency-based learning, where the model adjusts to our skill level, and learning analytics, which you're probably using right now. Just a good base of analytics and data that you need to understand your students better. So if we talk about just some of these models, you might have heard of Dirkx. That was an early on model that looked at providing online learning and upskilling with courses and classes in a linear fashion to meet students at the points where they needed to be met. You might have heard of Airtable, as I mentioned, using data, learning analytics, just finding a way to summarize the most important data. And what was magical about this is yes, it was underpinned by AI, but you couldn't really tell. And it helped a lot of people for whom data was perhaps slightly uncomfortable. You might have heard of Wonder School, which was an aggregated way of using community solutions to house students that otherwise could potentially not afford going to class, or class was too far away, especially for ECD years. And finally, you might have heard of Squirrel AI Learning, which was one of the first AI-powered education providers. And what was interesting about Squirrel AI is that they really focused on science and math. And that's not something I don't advocate. I believe that those skills are key. But again, and I go back to the words of Jack Ma that we saw earlier. What about the arts? What about giving access to painting, to poetry, to sports? The more technology becomes a part of our life, the more we have to be better at being human. So the work that we're doing right now with artificial intelligence, which we deploy for both schools and university, takes learning into a holistic view. We keep our eye on that 2028 model that I mentioned to you earlier, where, and again, I don't want to scare you, I just want to have a good conversation with you today, but where we start to think about, hey, how much of learning is no longer, how much of teaching is no longer going to be our responsibility? How much of teaching is going to be supplemented by models? I'm going to show you a quick video that is going to help demonstrate what that might encompass. I wanted to show this to you today because what's happening right now, and you might have noticed it in the video, is that even though we talk about scaling the world's best thinking, and we gave you examples of Helen Keller, Florence Nightingale, Socrates, there was a sentence in there. And that sentence read, "This isn't just limited to great thinking of the past." That means that any brain right now, any brain today can be scaled into an accessible teaching model. And this is huge. It means that any existing curricula can be designed in such a way that it is taught personalized, can assess in real time within 30 to 1.5 minutes an answer of a student in natural language, grade it, and help move that student forward. That removes so much time from a teacher, frees up 3 to 4 hours a day. And you know what that time allows us to do instead? Again, connect. It allows us to connect. It allows us to reach the student where they need to be where they need to be met. And we do that not just with technology, because as I said earlier, we cannot achieve these goals with just technology alone. And this is the role that humans play in this process. Emotional intelligence, not just mapping the assessment of the hard grade, but also understanding where that mindset is at, is going to be key to help students build a purposeful, productive, and powerful life. And so much of that already lives within the IB. It also means that we're able to take personalized learning and deliver it according to the needs of students, because the modules and the way in which we teach are automatically adjusted. Now, if you think about what this means, it's an absolute transformation of thinking about learning. You see on the left all the traditional ways that we deliver content: frameworks, research, articles, scholarly articles, peer-reviewed articles, training, interviews, videos. Now, you saw this video of Simon Sinek. If we watched it as human beings today, it would take us 7 minutes because it's a 7-minute video. Now, you might feel cheeky. You might put it on 2x, watch it extra fast on YouTube. Are you going to catch everything? Probably not. You would need to watch it again. Now, here's what you have to understand that is going to be a massive breakthrough for education. Artificial intelligence will watch that video for you like that. It's watched, it's understood, it understands it. It can then help you analyze where that video goes in the learning journey. And that's a transformation that cannot wait, because the more content we create in, like I said, a rapidly changing world, the more necessary it will be for us to dissect that content faster and get it out to students in a holistic way. If we sit on just 1.5 years of data alone related to the pandemic, it's going to take us a while to sift through all of it. We can't have one conversation and expect it to reach the scale that we need it to. So don't wait for this transformation, because the moment is now. The technology is there. And it's key and it's critical for the future of learning that we start thinking about what's out there, what's exponential, and tying that into what we already have access to, which are some of the more traditional modes of teaching. The AI can also understand visuals. It can see with its AI eyes, we'll call them for now, with its computing skills, all of the beauty that is in this video. So it's not just language. It's not just reading. It's also understanding these visuals. Now that's even more comprehensive, because what does that mean for your assessment? It means that IB art might be very different in a few years. So when we think about really exponentially growing where we're at and where we will be, it's an exciting future. And it's one where your role will become even more important. We've taken all of that learning so far, where we are in our 1.5-year journey of developing this type of powerful artificial intelligence, built this into mentors, teachers, if you will, that live right on multiple platforms. So if you're talking about any kind of learning management system or an external operating system or a third-party application, you don't have to. You can bring all of that right into a platform that you're already using at your school, which is amazing because that's where students are. So these are just some of the ways in which to think about learning and where we're going. So when we talk about all of the changes that we have ahead of us, it's overwhelming, especially if we think about what we've already been through. So I know we're going to have some time for questions and answers, but I thought I'd throw my own out there. What is the role of the IB? What is the role of the IB in exploring future-focused technology? What is your responsibility? What are the pitfalls that we have to address? What are our gaps? What are we not seeing? I'm happy to think about what we are seeing and where we are great. Again, I'm an IB alum. I did struggle, but I made it. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the program. But we can't get lost in pride. What are our pitfalls? Where do we have to be better? And what is too late? And what is too soon? We have to think about our sweet spot. What has this crisis taught us? Where are we going to accelerate now? And I'd like to just end today on a quote by one of my favorites, Maya Angelou. I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your work. I want to thank you already in advance for the thought-provoking questions you're going to put forward to Fidelis and myself. And I'm so grateful to have spent this morning or evening or night with you. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing for education. It is really a heartfelt thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Jos. What an enlightening session. And thank you for challenging us as communities of educators present in this platform. Thank you for reminding us that we need to empower our learners to feel in their inevitably challenging world and changing world, and creating more space to our students so that they can enhance and develop their skills. And there are a few questions here, Jos. And the first one is about teachers, and they make a big difference in the learning journey of the student. And one of the participants in the audience is asking, so what is your approach to teachers who are scared of technology? How can we support them?
Fidelis, thank you for your kind words and thank you for the time today. I appreciate it. This is a beautiful question, and a big thank you to the brave audience member who said what everybody is thinking. When we talk about technologies like artificial intelligence, yeah, it is scary. When I see the model talk to me and I'm not sure whether I said it or the model said it, yeah, it's scary. It is scary. And I try to just take a break and remember that the only way the models are going to get better is when we get better. It is a relationship. The human and the technology, it is a relationship. Just like you've learned to have a relationship with your other technology devices. And I don't mean, your phone only. I'm talking about, because technology, by the way, is an interesting word. It itself is actually, it's about a system that improves something for us. It's about a model that improves something for us. So if we break that down, that can be something as simple as a water kettle. Just don't need to be afraid of it, even though boiling water can hurt, right? Boiling water can hurt. It can cause a lot of damage, but we know now how to manage it. So if that fear is there, dive in. Dive in. Because only by getting to know the products and getting to know the technology will it become easier. And can you reduce your fear? So again, a massive thank you to the person who asked this, because it's a really real question. And another way to think about it is, when we feel afraid of technology, just remember that we're in control of our journey associated with it, number one. Number two, everything has multiple purposes, right? So AI can be used for good. And I will be the first to say that AI can be used for bad. But a knife can be used for good, and a knife can be used for bad. And that's why it's more important now than ever before to instill human-based learning in our students, empathy, connection, because those are the skills that are going to be required to use technology for good. And within that conversation lies a lot of questions around ethics, which we can absolutely talk about. Perhaps today is not the platform, and it's an important conversation. And of course, I'm willing to have it.
Thank you, Jos. And just to build on that, there is actually another question that's very related to that. So how do we lean into technology while also ensuring that we protect students from the challenges that come with using technology, like screen addiction, online harassment, access to misinformation. And as school leaders or even teachers, there is so much responsibility placed on us to look after the students.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for asking. So I want to tackle your question with every different element that you gave. I'm afraid I don't remember all of them because I was so busy focusing, but I do remember screen addiction,
Yes.
I think bullying, harmful content. All right, so talk about screen addiction. Now, I don't want to speak for other models, but in the way that we work with AI, the way that we work with technology, we always encourage breaks. Always. Where the AI acts just like you would as a teacher. Well, I don't want to speak for you how you would act as a teacher, but in my experience, if I'm doing a workshop or an educational session, there are breaks. We stand up, we move, we stretch. Again, IB theater. It's all about interacting. So we've taken a lot of that and actually built it right into our model. Go off and create something. Come back when you're finished. Remember when I showed you how the AI can actually see visuals? All right, so go off, create something, come back with a drawing, come back with a script, come back with something creative. So there are ways to get people away from computers, and I am all about it. All about it. Again, technology needs to work for us, not against us. Yeah. So that's screen addiction. Now we talk about bullying. I love this question. And this is probably a little bit more of an algorithmic answer. But there are a lot of ways to protect language, just like we have a code in which we communicate now. No swear words, kindness, consciousness. And I think you might remember that was one of my first slides that really looked at keeping AI responsible. So there's something called a toxicity meter, which helps us make sure that the way in which we train our algorithms screens for toxicity. And you know what? People always ask this, and they're like, well, what about the bias in AI? Let me tell you, there's only bias in AI because there's bias in humans. There's only bias in AI because there's bias in humans that we do not address. So until we start to address bias in humans, our models are going to do exactly what we say. So we have to be better people. And I keep going back to that it's a loop. So the more time you have to connect with your students and teach them what it means, the integrity of being a human being, the better that AI model is going to be able to serve the learning journey as well. Yeah. And finally, I think the question also asked for harmful content, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay. So the harmful content is out there. And, the IB is global. And what fascinates me is that what is, perhaps deemed offensive in one culture is accepted in another. What's sensitive in one culture is not sensitive in it's a really flowing conversation. There are ways to just put in barriers from a just a purely computational perspective to protect students from harmful content, which should be a priority. On the flip side, there's also our responsibility to create a safe space that if that harmful content does surface, that we can hold a student, that we don't make them embarrassed for something that they came across. And you know this as teachers, but that we hold them and that we keep a safe space. Because it's hard enough to navigate the world as it is. And just like when the internet I started using the internet, we were living in Dakar, Senegal, at the International School of Dakar, which now has a 12th grade. I don't know if it's an IB school though, but anyway, for any of you that have been to Senegal, I was living there at the time when we first had internet, and yeah, it opened up a world for everybody, right? But we're all fine, right? We're all on Zoom now. So again, don't be afraid. It's an evolution that we're undergoing together, and we need to all be a part of that.
Yes, thank you so much. And we are coming to the end of the session, but there are still a number of questions, some of them referencing universities, what we should be doing with universities. Others referencing what about children who are in schools that are in the least developed countries, and would really appreciate if you could give us responses in the next couple of days. And I just want to thank everyone and join me in thanking Jos for such an insightful session and for reminding us as educators that we actually have to keep up with our students if we have to continue remaining relevant. So thank you so much. And the community here, please, we will see you back tomorrow on the platform and continue interacting with we have a rich network here really in this conference. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jos.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.